Hi everybody, this is Jamie Dragosta, and we are going to continue our discussion on increasing our level of consciousness. Now, we've been talking about the law of attraction, and we've been talking about how the evolution of different emotions are going to affect not only our life but also our bodies. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about today is the process of losing weight and getting really healthy. Now, I titled this Fat, Depressed, and Physical Pain. Now, one of the things that I really have found is, as I went through my own transformation, and I lived a life where I was, quite frankly, very busy. I was always on the road, and quite frankly, I really didn't take care of my body that well. And I got up to where I was over 300 pounds. I was very depressed. I was very unhappy. I was always in although I was making okay money, quite frankly, I just didn't like it. And I oftentimes I didn't like the people that I was dealing with. And so, I found myself not only mentally and physically unhealthy, but, just my body was riddled with pain. I had a heart attack. And so I started to go through a process where I hit rock bottom. And I hit rock bottom because I got to a point where my father had passed away. And I realized that what I wanted was not the lifestyle that I was living. So I hit that moment, and I had a desire to change. And so in so doing, what I started to go through is a process, and I didn't really realize it, but I was increasing my spirituality. Now, here's the thing. If you want to get rid of physical pain, and if you want to get rid of emotional pain, and you want like depression and anxiety and other mental disorders or things that are holding you back, you really have to hit that point in your life where you've had enough. And you've had enough, and you don't want to live that lifestyle anymore. Now, when I started to go through this process of losing weight, it necessarily wasn't a spiritual quest that I was on. But what I started to realize is that as I started to understand the chemistry that was actually happening in my body, and by the way, I was doing this without cardio exercise. I had just come off of healing my body. I had a prosthetic knee replacement, and at the age of 45, and so I couldn't run. That wasn't even an option for me. I was eating a lot of bad foods for me, and quite frankly, I really didn't want to change a lot of that. But as I started to go through the process of healing my inner heart and healing my emotions here, what I started to realize is that I started to have the weight just completely drop off of me. So if you want to lose weight, and if you want to get a six-pack abs, and you want to become healthier and get rid of pain, and a lot of people have chronic pain, but if you have sickness, illness, and disease, all of a sudden now a lot of the stuff goes away, and it goes away through the evolution of our consciousness. Now, how does this work? Let me give you an example. Let's start with the concept of metaphysics. When you were in high school or junior high or even college, or maybe even now if you're going through a work phase where you have to study and take a test, all of a sudden on this particular test day, everybody has the sniffles. We start to have runny nose and symptoms of a cold or the flu. Now, why does this happen? Well, this happens because, quite frankly, our body is in a state of disintegration when we are under stress. Now, you don't have to have full-blown anxiety or full-blown depression to feel stress in your life. But when you have stress in your life, what ends up happening is your body is not going to be as strong. Now, there are lower levels of attractor fields, and there are higher levels of attractor fields. And let me give you some examples. When we are in a state where we are dealing with fear and guilt and shame, what ends up happening is we know that our body is actually kind of contracting a little bit, and we know that our energy isn't there. We just aren't doing as well. And when we start to raise that level of consciousness and we go through, like, it starts as low as guilt, then it goes to apathy, and then grief, and then fear, desire, and anger, and eventually pride. And then eventually when we get to that pride level, we start to get kind of a little bit of a confidence. And Dr. David Hawkins developed this level of consciousness where he said that as we increase this vibration within our body, all of a sudden now the physiology of our body starts to react, and it starts to increase. And we know that our body has a direct proportion energy level to our thought process. And eventually when we get to a confidence level, you know, this is where a lot of Western and Eastern philosophy kind of meet in our solar plexus, that we are confident, we're strong, we have the gusto, we have the life force. And all of a sudden now, when you start to raise above that, you have a different outlook on life. And when you have a different outlook on life, you're not only is your attitude changing, but you know, the way that you view things. And all of a sudden now, there's a different chemical reaction that is actually happening in the body. Now we know that there are that our central nervous system, which is comprised of our brain and our spinal cord and our peripheral nervous system, which are all the nerves that go out to, you know, all the organs. We know too that the peripheral nervous system has two functions. One of it is sensory and the other is motor. And so we have the ability to interpret our world, and this is our sensory input, and then there's a flow back to our motor functions, and depending on our attitude and the way that we see things determines the reaction. So we receive sensory input and we have motor output. And so this is kind of a symbiotic relationship on our health. And so if you want to lose health and you want to become stronger, I actually kind of think that maybe one of the most important things that you could do is go through a spiritual upgrade. Now, we've been talking about the evolution of consciousness, and we've been talking about the vibration of love for about the last week, and there's a direct correlation on how that works to the law of attraction. You see, when you are in a state of misery, you've heard the saying, misery loves company. We tend to find other people who are in misery. And so we're literally attracting more people in our circumstances that draw upon that misery state. Now, I want you to think of this. When you have your body, your skin is a membrane. So if we're outside in a snowstorm or in a sandstorm, our skin is going to protect us. But if we're continually exposed to that vibration of sand or wind or harsh weather, you know, it's going to start to deteriorate our skin. And then when we have skin breakdowns, oh my gosh, then everything happens, you know, right? But it's the same thing with our organs. So if you are having organ problems, or if you're having pain in your joints or in your bones, or you know, you have some type of disease, kidney disease, heart disease, what have you, this means that the integrity of that organ is being disintegrated. And so we know that when we increase the amount of energy or the amount of light that comes into our body, we actually have the ability to heal ourselves. So when you are accepting more light, and you could even say this as a spiritual light, or the light of God, or the light of Christ, or the light of Buddha, or the light of whatever religion or theology that you want to have, you come to a point where when you hit rock bottom, you realize that enough is enough and I don't want any more. And you kind of hit that dark moment. And a lot of famous people like Joseph Campbell and Dr. Carl Jung, they call this, the soul's journey, or the dark night of the soul, or the hero's journey. And when you hit that, all of a sudden your motivation changes. And your motivation changes from a lower state of vibration into an increasing. And when you eventually hit that point of confidence, like, yes, I can do this, I'm sick and tired of the way that I'm living, all of a sudden now your body's physiology is going to change. And so when I started to lose that weight, I had so much motivation in my life that I want to change, that all of a sudden, not only did my mentality change, now I didn't start jogging and I didn't start to eat right away or to change my food choices, but my desire changed. And that's what you need to have happen. You've got to get to that point where you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And you know, if you need that extra motivation, then get a coach. I'm a coach. I'm a life transformation coach. I'm a health coach. And so as I started to go through this process, I started to learn the different things that I needed to do because my desire changed. And my thought process changed, and this has a direct correlation on the physiology, just like when you were taking the test and you got the sniffles because you're a little bit nervous about it. And that nervousness now affects your body. Now we know that the body has two different types of hormones, we could say. Some of them are anabolic, and this means that they create and they give you energy and they build things up. And some of them are catabolic. Now some of them that are anabolic are endorphins, and they make you feel good, like the serotonin in our gut, and they make you feel great. And some of them are catabolic, like adrenaline. This means it starts to tear apart and take things down. And so when you live in a state of anxiety or depression or anger or fear or these low level vibrations, your body is physically emitting a hormone out there that's starting to destroy the membranes of not only your skin perhaps, but other organs. And so we fall victim to disease. And if you want to change your life, then increase that into an anabolic hormone like the endorphins, like serotonin. And you have to figure out ways to become happier. And perhaps, again, maybe one of the best things to do is to find a coach, somebody that motivates you, somebody that enriches you. And so when you're constantly surrounded by people that are toxic and they suck your energy from you and they make you feel low or they make you feel bad, well, that's going to have an effect on your body. And a lot of people right now in the United States especially, we're fat. We are fat people. Our nation is getting fat. And that is a combination of how we feel. It's a combination of the foods we eat. Now we know that the scriptures say as above, so below. And so when you are getting negative outside influences that make you feel bad, it's the same with what you eat. We know that there's a direct correlation to man-made synthetic foods and foods that have pesticides or chemicals in them. They are not going to increase the same activator fields as those that are 100% organic. Now, eventually, your desire changes to this. And when you start to love yourself and you start to increase that vibration, all of a sudden now, you're not going to want to put things in your mouth or eat foods that are riddled with pesticides and preservatives and chemicals out there. You're going to change that attitude. And so sometimes you need a little bit of push, and sometimes that push comes when you hit rock bottom. But either way, there is going to be an evolution of consciousness, or there's going to be a de-evolution of consciousness, and you will continue to lower your vibration or increase your vibration. And oftentimes people who rest in those lower vibrations, they toggle between fear, and they toggle between anxiety, and they toggle between depression and shame and guilt. Or you can do something about it. Go through a spiritual increase. Now, I'm not necessarily talking you need to go be religious. I'm not religious, but I am very spiritual. I have found that when you accept love and light into your life, everything changes. The way that you view the world, the way that you interact with other people, and more importantly, your health. So if you want to get rid of that pain, if you want to get rid of that fat, you want to get rid of that body that is making it so that your life is miserable, well, start to change your evolution of consciousness and focus on different practices that involve love and forgiveness and looking at the world and other people through kindness. And when you become closed off and indifferent, well, that is a destructive, that is a catabolic force in your life, rather than love and generosity and kindness, which is an anabolic. It is a force of creation, a force of joy, and a force of brilliance out there. So if you have any questions, please make sure that you contact me. Make sure that you like and subscribe if you are interested in this type of information, and I will make sure that you get that information out there as much as I possibly can to you. So I appreciate it. Love you all. Thanks for tuning in, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.